sales is all about providing value. There's educational sales, educational marketing. This is where I lean, is provide value to your prospects, your ideal client. Like once you visualize those people and say, those are the people I serve, now go out and provide value for them. When you do, you're going to be top of mind. They're going to see you more. They're going to recognize your brand, and they see you as a person that's helping them, serving them, versus someone that's always chasing the sale.
Well, welcome once again to Raising the Consciousness of Humanity, where we bring on people that are inspirational, that are thought leaders, that are way showers, and that are truly here to make a difference within the world. And today I'm super excited because I have my dear friend, Harry Spaight, who is the author of Selling with Dignity. And if I read the words right on his website, it says, serve first, the selling will follow. As you know, by if you're tuning in via visual like Facebook or YouTube, you're also going to recognize that he and I are bald brothers. We go to the same barber, Harry, right? So, welcome, Harry, and yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey. Not so much about why you lost your hair, right? We probably can go into that for a while, but um, what is the reason why you wrote the book Selling with Dignity and why you're speaking on this and why is this important to you?
All right. Well, lots of questions, Ron. It's great to be here. First of all, I really enjoy our conversations that we've had in the past and on LinkedIn and so forth. So I'm looking forward to this. The reason I wrote the book Selling with Dignity, as a fellow bald guy who's getting up there in years, I was reflecting one day during COVID about my career in sales,
Mhm.
and I was never really the pushy, salesy type. I used to do mission work for a number of years, for over a decade. Spent a couple of years in the Dominican Republic. And as I was reflecting about my career, I realized that there's probably a lot of people who are bashful about sales, who don't like it, could probably benefit from my approach to sales, which was all about serving others and politely asking for the order. So during the whole COVID experience, I took advantage of the time and wrote a book, and now it's out there as Selling with Dignity. So thanks for the question.
Nice. And so to expand upon that, Harry, is I know you're out there speaking on this. I know you've been doing some podcasting and you've been interviewing a lot of people. What do you see as the future? Like the new paradigm of selling or serving or whatever way you want to look at it. Because honestly, it needs to exist. We know there's resistance sometimes around it. You will hear people that say, I don't really want to be a salesperson, or they have identified they have identified a concept of what a salesperson is that they don't want to be. Maybe that's a better way to put at it. But what do you see as, the change that's going on currently and as well as expanding into the future? How is this going to work? Because we still have to sell our products, I guess. As a business, you
Right.
still have to sell
Yeah.
your products.
Absolutely. And the benefit of having sales in an organization is that you're having people spread the message. So we're all messengers. And the way that a lot of people did that in the past was they would broadcast it, wear signs. Literally, people would be wearing signs on street corners, things along those lines. But today, sales is all about providing value. There's educational sales, educational marketing. This is where I lean, is provide value to your prospects, your ideal client. Right? Once you visualize those people and say, those are the people I serve, now go out and provide value for them. When you do, you're going to be top of mind. They're going to see you more. They're going to recognize your brand, and they see you as a person that's helping them, serving them, versus someone that's always chasing the sale. So I think that type of selling is transitioning. There's a lot of people that view this similarly to me. There's tons of great books out there, ranging from James Muir, who talks about the perfect close, a very servant minded way to ask for the order. They're selling from the heart, they're selling with a servant mindset, selling without selling your soul. So there's a lot of people that view this type of selling is really the best way. It's consultative and it removes the slime from selling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We all have a reference point what that slime is, and it's like the three things we hear: do they know, like, or trust you? And if you're representing slime, I guess most of that doesn't work. The slime mindset, the slimy way of selling, and that's kind of like what I think trips people up because, like you said, it's all about serving. It's all about making a difference. It's all about how can you help that person. And
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no, you didn't cut me off.
Okay. Yeah, so if you go in with this approach that is all about serving the other person, all you really have to do is learn to ask for the business. If you don't ask for the business, you're going to miss out on the opportunity. It's not just, it's serving. I view it as the server in a fine dining restaurant. The server is there providing, menus, giving you offers with the specials and wine list and so forth. The server eventually is going to say, "May I take your order?" If they don't say that and you just come in and you're looking at the menu and you never get your order taken, that restaurant's not going to make money. So they
Yes.
have to, right? They have to ask for the order. So if we look at it that way and say we're serving our community, whatever our community is made up of, and if you believe people need what it is you are offering, if you don't, that's a whole nother thing. But if you believe they do, then it's our obligation to share that with people and to ask for the business. The way it's being shared, though, is there's a lot of people are leading with themselves, leading with product. I prefer lead with education, lead with value, and that will be a much better outcome for you, in my experience.
Yeah, and I think
Your thought?
one of the other things you shared with me before is lead with those questions that you can ask to help bring forth, like you said, the education or the understanding of how you can help serve them or educate them. And I guess to the person that in a restaurant example, like we shared, like the waiter comes up, eventually is going to say, "May I take your order?" Right?
Right.
But there's people out there that still get stuck and not asking. Maybe it's because their own mindset of what's going on in them, or maybe it's fear or whatever. What do you find to help that type of person who may be listening right now that whatever product they're selling, if they're maybe good at educating, good at saying hello, good at being a very good consultant, maybe, but they're stuck and they're not asking, right? I'm
Yeah.
just what
I,
what would you share to help that person?
I'll share a story. Years ago, when I was first starting in sales, I was selling this technology. It was really for the corporate environment. And the customer was testing out the technology. They felt like they wanted to test it out to see if it was worth going ahead with it. And it was like a 3 or 4 year term that they were committing to. And so we brought out the technology back in the day in the mid 90s, showed them how to use it. I showed up pretty much every day to make sure people knew what they were getting into, how they used it, showed them some things that I knew, made sure there were no unanswered questions. Well, after several days, the buyer says to me, it's like, "Harry, how do we go ahead and keep this thing?" I'm like, I really don't know. As I was hesitant, I'm saying this to myself. And so I said, I've got to make a quick call and I'll get back to you. And I had to call my sales manager and said, they want to keep it. They want to keep it. What do we need to do? So, moral of the story is I sold my first deal without ever asking for the order. The
Sure.
client raised their hand. Now, I asked all along the way about getting the meeting and bringing in something for them to try, and I had these next steps. But when it came to the magical close, I was clueless. So
Hmm.
I wrote business over the years without really having what this closing line is, and that's a whole nother topic. So for people who feel like, well, I just don't know how to ask for the order, sometimes you don't, and sometimes people will just say, so can we work together? I
Yeah.
mean, right? I like what you're doing. So how do I get that? So
Yeah.
there are people that will say that, but the better thing to do is for us to own it. And the way we can own it is simply say something along the lines, would you like to see what it looks like to work together? Would you
Oh,
like
I
to
like
see
that.
what it looks like to work together? Would you like to see? You keep saying it.
I
And so
like
you
that.
go in front of the mirror, record yourself on your phone, whatever it is, say that 50 times. So it becomes natural. Instead of trying it the first time in front of a live person, you may stumble all over yourself because you're nervous. But get the nerves out, practice, and it will become more natural for you as time goes on. What's your
Awesome.
thought on that?
My thought is I like that because it seems to be somewhat gentle, but comes to asking the question, getting to the point of asking the question. Would you like to see what it looks like for us to work together?
Yeah. And so that gets you now into the relationship that they see that there's more behind you just serving. Right?
Yeah.
There needs to be a transaction in order for this relationship to continue because you cannot serve everybody for free. Eventually, you need to eat. So we have to be discerning and say, I've got to spend time with people who are willing to buy more than people who are just curious and are always friendly but are not willing to buy. And we have to differentiate the two and say, I'm going to do my volunteer work for the volunteering. And when it comes to business, I've got to meet people who are my avatar, which is people who will pay for my services. And there are
Yeah.
plenty of those people. So if we do that with that mindset, then we'll recognize, and I've dealing with people over the years, I could say from outside of that little window of being face to face with somebody, I could say that person likes you, but they're not going to buy from you. They have no emotional investment.
Yeah.
So
I see.
that's a
Yeah.
big difference.
Yeah. No, and your language is big, and I like the way you phrase that. And I would suggest the audience to take, whoever's listening, practice that in front of the mirror, practice that with your product or with your customers. I think that's where we really, I remember another, I remember somebody else saying something like, can, would it be okay? Or something to the line that let us help be your partner in this. They used the word partner and I liked it. I
Yeah.
think it was a sign and graphics company. Like, what can we be your signage and graphics partner? And so I thought, wow, that's asking. That's certainly asking, but it's asking not just like, can I sell you this?
Right.
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 So I like that. Language is big, and you certainly I like the way you phrase that.
Well, and if you think of selling in a transaction like that, maybe a sign company or something like that, people would say, I'm buying a sign.
Yeah.
But for someone who is partnering,
Yes.
it's different. Now you're a consultant.
Yeah.
So you can provide insight, you can provide valuable information that will help the person's business so that when they're thinking about signs, you can say things like, what do you want the sign to do? Versus what's your sign look like, right? It's just like, what do you have in mind? Here's our price, and they go into that.
Yeah.
Instead, you now ask discovery questions and say, why a sign? And they
Yeah.
said, well, I'm thinking of putting it on my vehicle. And, someone says, well, what else have you done? And just figure out what's the story behind why they think the sign on their vehicle is the answer. It
Sure.
might be, but from your perspective as a sign store owner, and you might know what works and what may not work, you can now advise the person.
Yeah.
So maybe they wanted a sign that you can't figure out what they do for business. I see this all the time. You look at the truck or you look at a car, it's like, the heck, what does that business do? Right? Have you
Right.
ever seen that where you're just like, I don't even know
Yeah.
what that means?
Yeah.
So like the other day, I was following someone and it was like honey dew, and I was thinking, okay, the person is going to do honeydew lists, and I'm trying to drive up to the van to figure out if that's what they do, and it's not. They do carpet cleaning. So
Oh,
honeydew and carpet cleaning to me wasn't the same,
yeah.
right? So if I just saw someone said the honeydew, it's like, okay, so what do they do? I'm going to think
Yeah.
there's a honeydew list, but it does not connect. It does not really jive with carpet cleaning. It's You have to stretch. So someone who is in the sign business can consult and say, you might want to rethink some of that. And so that it matches with what people are thinking. That's just my long answer to a short question.
No, no, no. You're like it's getting a sense of clarity about what is the end goal. I mean, going back to the restaurant, it's not just saying, "Are you hungry?" It's saying, uh, what are you looking to what is your desire? What are you looking to eat? What do you like? Or what are you
Yeah.
feeling for? Here was a time, just how I relate to this. It was a interior decorator, corporate interiors, and I came with a
Yep.
mindset of asking questions, and I heard her say, "How would you like this environment to feel?" And I was like,
That's interesting.
"Yeah, that was like." Wow. I mean, that took the conversation totally different because the two people that were there from the corporation, I noticed how they reacted to that question. And they started using feeling language. It was
Right.
a totally different uh, experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so this is interesting, right? Where the opportunity is so great in front of us.
Yeah.
If we think of if we have curiosity, and this is my approach to sales, when you're raising consciousness, I believe that whole selling relationship can be a lifelong relationship. When you're selling servant mindedly, that client is going to be can be a client for life, and they will give you referrals and you be friends and so forth. And so, like, speaking the same language,
Hmm.
right? Where we have to sometimes think and say, we have to go out in areas where we're not necessarily comfortable. And when you said that about, well, what feelings come to mind when you're thinking of this, it's like, well, if someone's making a big decision and you ask that question, or like when you envision having this, what feeling comes to mind? Or what's
Yeah.
a concern that you have if this doesn't work out as anticipated? What would be
Hmm.
some of your top concerns? Now they're telling you all of this, and this is part of how you set up the sale,
Yeah.
right? Because you want to remove the doubt, you want to remove the concerns that they have, not by ignoring them, but by dealing with them head on. Say, I'm going to help this person. One of their top concerns is no one's going to show up post sale and they get this expensive whatever and they're left alone and it could, ruin their business if it doesn't work right or whatever it is. What's your thought on that?
I like what you're saying because, as we've always been told, it is somewhat of an emotional process. Decision making in general is, and you're helping them, I guess, even from what you might call the negative aspect of what is identifying the problem. Like if we didn't do anything, if you
Right.
didn't go forward with this, what could be the result, and the result would probably be the same old, may not be good, right? But if they do go forward with it, then what is the possibility? And that's I like that because you're now helping them get more clarity of the reasons why they're making the decisions they want to make.
Yeah, and so when you have that, right? So now the buyer is more inclined to proceed because a lot of lost sales are not really lost. They just don't make a decision. So getting the person to the point where they feel like if they don't do something, they're going to be worse off
Hmm.
other than just this is an upgrade to your life or your business, but if you don't do something, well, what's the result of that? And if the answer is nothing, everything stays the same, they're probably not going to do it,
Yeah,
right? So you've got to you want to uncover that, and if it's not uncovered, you could be chasing after something that you think is going to be magical, and it just doesn't. It's just wasted time because the person does not have enough in it emotionally to make that investment. And then if they say, well, if I don't do it, no big deal. I'm saving tens of thousands of dollars of not doing it.
yeah,
Or if I don't do it, that's going to impact my business and I'm going to be left behind or whatever.
yeah. Well, you're right. If you identify if the pain is real, there's some sense of motivation there. Else you wouldn't have been in the conversation to begin with. But
Yeah.
if you identify that, so that's really important.
And what's interesting, Ron, and I'm trying to figure this one out, but I've heard and I see the data that shows that people move away from pain
Uh-huh.
more than they move towards something that's beneficial. So you could offer something. So if we think through that and research it a little bit, and we say, well, I'm offering all this good stuff for people, and they're just not interested.
Hmm.
Maybe the approach is, what are they missing out on, right? You've got the FOMO. What are they missing out on? What challenges are they having? What if they just continue with status quo and we have that conversation, then tie it into the good that is around the corner with your product or service? But that's what the data shows. So, do we ignore that and just say, oh, I don't want to go near something that's a conflict or something that's problematic or maybe I'm not comfortable with? Or is that maybe growth mindset opportunity too? What's your thought on all of that?
Well, I think you need to bring it up. I mean, even if you ask the questions, tell me more about why you reached out to me and why we're meeting today. In that case where, they've reached out to you, tell me more about why you're seeking this and why now. Because I think if in that conversation, Harry, I think the biggest thing today is vulnerability and authenticity. And if we as salespeople come open-heartedly into the conversation in that way, and then we provide that space for others to express and be open and vulnerable and authentic, they'll probably say, well, yeah, I mean, honestly, my if I don't do that, my business is going to suffer. And
Right.
then would suffer in what way?
Yeah.
And so I continually asking, not to stay there. You want to take them to the promised land. You don't want to, but certainly it is a motivation.
Yeah. Well, I think you play it out until you have an answer that is something that you could work with.
Yeah.
Like if a person is, they say these are my top concerns, and we're not asking why are those what about it. I don't like to use the word why too much
Okay.
because I view why as challenging.
Can I ask why?
Yes, you can ask why, wiseacre. But if you think about the word why, like why, maybe it came from my parents scolding me. I don't know. Maybe I need to see some psychotherapist. I don't know. But if I'm being challenged, why why are you thinking that way? I don't feel like I want to give the answer.
Hmm.
It's just a defense mechanism kicks up in me. I'm not saying it kicks up in everybody, but think about the word why when someone asks you. But if we
Hmm.
use the word what, and I've not done any research on this either, but if I were to say what led you down to that path of thinking, if you don't mind, what led you down that path?
Yeah.
Now it's completely exploratory versus challenging.
Nice.
And so now I think the goal then is always is to get on the same side of the aisle, same side of the table as your potential buyer. And we just want to be careful how we're asking things. So, over the years, I learned why can raise some eyebrows and don't challenge me on that because this is the way I've always done it, right? Might be a response. Well, why did you do that? So why I've always done it. Okay,
Sure.
but if you go, well, what was the path that led you down that? Now it's like, it's the way I've always done it, but it's less, right? Well, now you can have a conversation that isn't so confrontational. My
Sure.
thoughts.
I like it. So I'll correct my why.
We want to know what
What
your
led you
why
down? Yeah.
is, but
Yeah.
what I think you're going to
It's
find,
a
just
good.
try it out and see if there's a different feeling. Just like the objection versus concern word, right? Is there a different feeling that comes up that allows you to be more empathetic?
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit more too? Because I know you and I had a little bit of that briefly as a conversation before we hit the record button. But you basically said you got away from the word handling objections or the phrase handling objections to helping them with their concerns. And I like that. Can you kind of expand upon that whole thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I was analyzing the word objection, and I realized that as I was writing the book, Selling with Dignity, I thought I removed the word completely, but it's still in there. And when you think about all of the quote objection words that are out there, your price is too high, you haven't been in business long enough, there's someone else I'm related to, I'm not ready, whatever those words are, we think of them as objections in
Mhm.
sales, right? It's a sales term or it's also an attorney or a legal term that you see in the courts. But you don't really see that term in relationships.
Mhm.
And in relationships, I've been married for, 30 something years. I don't think there is one time I said to my wife, "Why are you raising that objection?" I don't think she's ever said it to me. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever said it to my kids, and I know for sure my kids never said it to me and said, "Dad, that's a crazy objection." It just doesn't happen. So if it's not a natural term, I felt like, okay, so what is natural? And when someone's buying, what is coming up in their mind? They have fears. They're concerned that the price is they're overpaying. They don't want to overpay. They want to make sure that everything is priced fairly. They want to make sure that if you've been in business for a year versus someone else in 10 years, you're going to do the job for them. And whatever else, you can now view it and say, well, they have legitimate concerns. Do I want to
Mhm.
overcome these legitimate concerns? Or do I want to help them through these legitimate concerns?
Nice.
So by having empathy, you mentioned the authenticity, the vulnerability, we now put ourselves in their shoes as them and they think, okay, if they were dealing with me, if I was them dealing with me, I would say, is your price in line? I'm going to Google it. I'm going to get another quote. I want to just see, is this number within reason? Because I have no idea.
Yeah.
Is that wrong? Or they might say, I need to talk to my wife. Well, do we want to encourage that or discourage that? No, no, don't talk to your wife. Whatever you do, don't talk to your wife, please. She'll say no. Or would you encourage it and say things like, in big decisions, I talk to my wife too. I mean, we're
Hmm.
a partnership. She's part of the committee, she's part of the buying committee. I understand. What can I get for you so that you can help explain this to your wife? Would you like some, a white paper, a case study? Would you like some testimonials? I'm here to help,
Yeah.
right? A whole different approach than you don't really need to talk to your wife. Who's makes the decision? You said earlier you make the decision. So why is this talking to your wife coming up? Right
Yeah.
now that's challenging. Who wants to do business with anyone like that? I sure don't.
Yeah.
What's your thought on all this, Ron?
I love it. I think helping them with their concerns is a whole different mindset because when you think about the word objection, people take that personally, like it's an arrow shot into their chest.
Mm,
Whereas if you're helping them with your concerns, now you're still in that partnership, I guess, helping understand a little bit more about how you can help them. Maybe it's a change in what you're offering. Maybe it's allowing them to explore it themselves, what's going on inside of them. Maybe it is going back to their partner, their wife, or whoever. But providing an understanding of what that concern is the biggest thing because you if you leave at that point and pack up and just leave, you never help them with their concern either.
exactly. Yeah, and so I think that's key is that somebody will say, I'm just not interested at this time.
Hmm.
So what do you do with that? It's a legitimate concern. They've got things on their plate. Some people will just pack up, like you said, say, okay, I get it, and really appreciate your time. And I don't even know what they say. It's just awkward
Yeah.
for me because now I'm curious and I want to find out what at this time means.
Mm.
And I'm going to do that very casually, unthreatening, or in a non threatening way. I'm going to say something along the lines which I totally understand because I do understand. I've been in situations where I've got other things on my plate. So I say that. I understand completely. I've been in situations where I have other things on my plate. When you said not at this time, or I'm just not interested at this time, could I ask what comes to mind when you say not at this time?
Mm.
'Cause I want to know. And if they say, oh, it's just I'm too busy, I say, I get it. Based on how busy you are these days, would it make sense to revisit this in a few weeks?
Yeah.
And to give them a chance to say no. And if they
Yeah.
say no, then you simply say, gotcha. You don't have to, I'm not saying word for word, but you acknowledge what they say, and then you can just simply ask, when would it make sense to re engage on this?
Nice. I like
And if
that.
they say never, right, you're finally giving them a chance to say, I'm really not interested in this. And
Yes.
that is okay because now we're not spending time chasing somebody who just isn't interested. On the other hand, you're giving them a chance to tell you how they buy. I want to know that, right? And if
Yeah.
they say, give me 90 days, I will say, is that enough time? Right? Give them an opportunity to say no, right? Because you're taking all the emotion out and say, is that enough time? Because you sound really busy. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have this all locked down and say, okay, so can we put it in the calendar? And now
Yeah.
you're set, right, for the next meeting, even if it's 90 days down, they're going to get notified. Change your notification so that they're notified a day beforehand or 2 days so that you're now resurfacing in their life because 90 days may be a while. But I suggest that they're on an email, newsletter, or something that they're being touched periodically as well.
Yeah.
What's your
Those are
thought on this?
no, those are all good points. A question that and maybe just to hear what you think is when somebody does say that, I'm just not, interested in going forward at this time. Could those words or that response, could that be a response that maybe is not the truth of what's going on in them? Maybe what really was happening was they were shopping. They had clearly no idea of what the price was. And suddenly, when they got to that understanding of what the cost was, they backpedaled. But being polite, they didn't
Hmm.
want to say to Harry, "Hey, Harry, your price is too high." They used another form of getting out of the
Right. Yeah.
conversation, and so I come sometimes I wonder because that comes off up a lot about it's just not ready to pull the trigger. I'm just not ready. It's not I was information gathering and yeah, that can be real. But I've as a buyer myself, there's sometimes and I've seen something I've said, all right, I'm clearly ready to decide. I'm ready to do this now. What do you think?
100%. I
Yeah,
mean, the, we don't know, but we're
yeah,
only going based on what they say. A
yes,
mistake people make at that point is say, is it my price?
okay,
Right? Because once you go down that path, you're now in my opinion, you're challenging them,
hmm,
and your price is, it's an issue for you. If you're
yeah.
leading with the issue, if you're saying, is it my price? Well, they never said it was your price. So why would you make it about price? And then they could say, yeah, it's your price. But we really don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
So I don't like to throw, I want them to tell me. And, then in 90 days, I don't need to know today. They set a follow up meeting, whether 30 days, 60, whatever the time period is. They weren't buying today, right?
Yeah.
We have that clear. So there's no urgency, like I have to know today. And maybe in the next meeting, this will come out. But as a consultant, right, in the higher ticket sale, you're a consultant. You have to kind of do this over time. This is where patience comes in, and let them tell you. You draw it out when you can, but you don't give them the option because they're going to say, "Yeah, yeah, that's easy because you raised it. Yeah, yeah, that's the reason." Right? And people will say
Yeah.
this all the time. Well, I lost a deal on price. It's like, no, you didn't. It's like you think you lost a deal on price, but that was never even the issue. Because people will buy stuff that there's value in it all the time. It's not this price thing. There's not enough value,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, I get it. When you're shopping around, I do the same thing. It's like I'm not ready at this time, and people say to me, "Is it your price?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of. It's a little high, and I'm not really ready to go anywhere near that." I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with it, but some people are embarrassed. I mean, I've been embarrassed before too. It's like, holy cow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not. I was curious, but I'm not paying that. Right? And I don't see the value in it.
Yeah.
Yeah? So, what's your thought?
I I agree. I mean, also I realize you just used the word patience. Harry, I would say most of my long-term relationships that I established within the world of sales, customers and people that I, call friends, that that I would say patience was the thing because there was some reason maybe at the beginning that they didn't, move forward, but it was being at least mindful of staying in contact, staying in touch, working on their terms of what time was to them. I had pressure on me from above me. Like I had a sales manager that was like, you just didn't know how to close it type
Right?
of thing.
Yes.
And I was like that. But I was realizing that there were certain people in my journey that needed more time. And I was okay with that.
Yep.
And I stayed in touch with them. And ultimately, 90% of those closed
Yeah.
and continued buying in the future, or even gave me referrals. So patience, I think, is one of those things that's rare in the world of sales because there's that pressure to try to meet quota.
Yeah. And there's pressure because people want to eat. Not every salesperson is getting paid salaries, right? And they're getting paid commission and they
Yep.
want to eat. And it becomes about themselves. And this is where
Yep.
the commission breath term comes up, where you're thinking way too much about you cashing the check versus what
Yep.
the prospect needs. And if their time is 3 months from now, you're just there too early. You're laying the
Yep.
foundation, but you're asking too early. And it's not because you're a bad closer, it's the timing is not right, where the pain and value, right? So if the person has to recognize they have a problem and they have to recognize they want to spend to solve the problem. If those two are not in sync, there's not a lot of magical things you can say. They have to believe that themselves. And when they do, hopefully you have built up enough trust and respect and rapport that they want to do business with you
Yeah.
when the time is right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Harry Spaight, you have shared a lot of gems with us today. I know we can go on for forever on this topic,
It's
and I'm
fun.
certainly going to bring you back on. And I think the audience would, would absolutely find it of huge value to actually, look up your book, look up Harry's book. It's called Selling with Dignity. I guess it's available on Amazon.
It
Is that
is,
where you?
but they can get a few chapters on my website, sellingwithdignity.com, the book, and get a free download of a few chapters
Awesome.
and see if
And
that's a fit.
and then your website is sellingwithdignity.com.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that on uh, the the text here on the screen so
Okay.
people can see that. Any other informations like how do people reach you? You do speaking engagements to sales groups as well as different business owners and things like that.
Yeah. And associations, people that want to help their members, their team to grow their sales in a more consultative approach. I am not the always be closing hard sale guy. It's a soft, long term, more profitable approach to sales that people actually enjoy buying and enjoy selling.
Nice. And I even learned something from you today.
Awesome. And what was that? What comes to mind for you?
You respectfully ended a few times and say, Ron, what's your thoughts on that? Those words, that's a true selling with dignity person. That doesn't just end with it's my way and my only way. You respectfully want to hear what the other person says.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have opinions, and I'm not saying my way is the only way.
Yeah.
It's a way, and it works for people who are not pushy, more servant minded. This approach works for me. I know it will work for many who just don't like to be pushy.
Well, Harry Spaight, thank you so much for being on. You really brought up, like I said, a lot of gems of wisdom. For those of you that are out there that are in sales or seeking to be sales, or maybe you're a business owner and you're awkward around the world, the word sales, buy Harry's book, Selling with Dignity. If you are looking to bring in somebody that's really going to help your sales department grow with some coaching or even with a workshop, or if you're looking for a great keynote speaker for one of your kickoff sales events, I know Harry personally, and he does that very, very well. So, once again, thank you for showing up to raising the consciousness of humanity. And Harry, thank you again for your time.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ron. It's been a blast.
Thank you.